What is going on again, guys? Welcome back to Tip Tuesday. We're in a new series. We're talking about how you can build your own exercise plans from scratch. We've already covered how to pick an exercise plan that would be directed towards your goals. So for example, if you were to use a free resource like YouTube and you're searching along for something, I've already given you all the information that you need to know if you watch previous Tip Tuesdays, that you would be able to find which workouts are actually going to be directing you to your goals and which workouts are just kind of going to be wasting your time or making you go in some weird pattern that never actually gets you to a destination that you're looking for. Are we excited? I'm excited. Thank you for joining. For anyone that is jumping on live, I would really love the interaction, because while we are talking about program design, as I said last week, it's a science, but it's also an art. There is a weird balance between a science and an art in this one, and anywhere in between, there are a lot of space for questions where something might come up that isn't obvious to me, but something that you really would like to know. So if we could get a nice back and forth going, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll just carry on talking to my phone. And you can just review these videos and hope that I tackle the question or the topic at the angle that you're hoping for. So let's see what happens, but I'm going to be holding thumbs for you. A little recap on last week. We spoke about the planes of movement. We spoke about 4 different planes of movement which help to categorize what kind of exercises go into what kind of movements. So there's one particular type of exercise that we were focusing on last week, because we were given, I brought up the example as if you were a complete beginner. So in a nutshell, without going into any of the terms that might confuse you, in a nutshell, we want to be sticking to very basic movements. There is our number one goal. Welcome back, Robin. Hopefully you give me some really cool questions and we can make this nice and interesting. What's up, Sammy? Thank you for joining us. Okay, so like I was saying, last week we were talking about how if you were a complete beginner, you would stick to movements that are only in one plane. Okay. Another tip that I want to give you is keep volume very low. Volume should be very low in a beginner's plan. If you are sedentary or if you have not exercised a lot in the last 6 months, the homeostasis principle is now working against you, because your body and your connective tissue and the amount of synovial fluid that your joints are going to secrete, etc., is not primed towards your body moving in a way that mimics a workout, where your heart rate's going up a lot, you're sweating, and you're making your muscles work. So if that is you, keep the intensity very low, keep the volume low. So there's a big difference between volume and intensity, and don't do things or fancy things like supersetting. So supersetting is when you do 2 exercises in succession without a break in between. That is more of an advanced style of programming. Also, what I mentioned last week is when you are doing movements, make sure that they mimic everyday life movements. So for example, instead of making someone do maybe a full squat, even though I'm a big believer in functional training, instead of someone doing a full squat in the beginning, mimic what they would do on a day-to-day basis. So if they were bending down to tie their shoe, or if they were picking something up, they're probably not going to go into a full squatting movement. They're going to try to pick that thing up as easily as possible, so their muscles and their joints are used to maybe moving only through the halfway through the movement. If you're going to be starting an exercise plan, rather stick to the exercises that are going to be as close to that as possible. In this way, we are minimizing our chance for injury and also minimizing the amount of hatred you are going to have for that exercise. Because at the end of the day, if you are a beginner and you jump yourself into an exercise plan, you get, ooh, so super excited. I'm going to lose all the weight and I'm going to do it now and it's going to happen so quickly and all of the enthusiasm is just shining through, and then you jump into an exercise plan because now we're going to make it happen. All the haters that used to tell me I'll never lose weight, whatever it is, all of the stuff comes up. All of the insecurities come up, and you just obviously want to get somewhere as quickly as possible. You do too much too soon. And that is the worst thing that you could do. Never do too much too soon, guys. First of all, you can hurt yourself. If you have an injury, you're not useful to anyone. You are not useful to yourself. Your exercise plan will stop very quickly if you hurt yourself. Second of all, your motivation levels will go. This is the burning. This is the exercise plan. Well, the motivation to exercise. It's burning. There's all the motivation. It's gone. Okay. Once you lose your motivation and you haven't achieved anything, you're probably not going to get the motivation back so quickly. And third of all, you're going to hate exercise. If you are doing an exercise plan and you are hating it, even if you're not a beginner, if you're intermediate or if you're in the advanced category, if you are hating your exercise, let me just say this clearly. If you hate the types of exercises that you're doing, or you push yourself to your limits every single time, and it becomes a chore, it's just you trying to push as hard as you can and always beat yourself yesterday, or always have a certain time that you do something in, or when you squat a certain weight, you always have to squat that amount of weight, otherwise the brain is very upset and feels like things are going backwards. If this is you, you're doing it wrong, okay? Pushing to that high limit can be helpful in a certain ordering of things, and it can be helpful if you're going to be an athlete. If you don't want to be an athlete, don't hate exercise. Don't put yourself through blood, sweat, and tears. The no pain, no gain philosophy has been debunked a long time ago. So let's all enjoy the movements that we're doing. Exercise at an intensity that doesn't kill us and make us want to stop and never come back, so that our body is also not in defense mode, fight or flight, and we can all get the fantastic results that we all deserve from putting in consistent effort. But if you want to know more about this sort of thing, go scroll through the feed, go back to the other videos where I've gone into more detail about these things. Yeah, I'm definitely preaching. You got me, Sammy. So I poked a little bit at a term that we're going to start talking about next week. I want to stick to the very basic stuff this week, but next week, spoiler alert, we're going to be going through the different phases that you have in an exercise plan, namely the progression phase, the maintenance phase, and the recovery phase. It's very important to take your body through different phases in an exercise plan. What a lot of people do, like I said, get super enthusiastic. They jump straight to the maintenance phase, or put their bodies in the position where they think that that's where the results come, when they're pushing themselves hard and the sweat is coming out, and I'm not going to go into those details again. And then people just try to stay at that level, and that is one of the worst things that you could do for your body. That is simply the easiest way to make sure that you're going to fatigue yourself. You'll get adrenal fatigue, you may start getting injuries, you may start getting sick, and you're going to have to be dragging yourself out of bed to get up in the mornings, just do normal stuff in your day, go to your workouts. That's when people start to abuse things like pre-workout. It's just like, oh, if I don't have pre-workout, I can't just get motivated to be in the gym. If that's you, you're probably exercising at too high intensity for a too long period of time. But we will talk about these things next week. Let's stick it to this week, Neil. I just love to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Okay, let's keep on the train. Stick to the topic, Neil. God damn it. Okay. So, the basics to making your exercise plan. We've spoken about the categories of the movements. That's all cool. What do you start with? When you start an exercise plan, what lots of people just tend to ignore is you need to have a warm-up, okay? Warming up is super important. How long should a warm-up be? Depends on how suited that you are to exercise or how long you've been exercising for. But if you're an intermediate to the advanced category, you can get away with about a 5-minute warm-up. If it has very good movements and you kind of doing the exact kind of thing that you need to in order to get whichever part of the body that you're going to be exercising, if you're doing a split routine or if you've got all the components and you kind of focus and you do that in 5 minutes, 5 minutes can be enough to warm up. I would recommend bringing your dynamic stretching and something to raise your heart rate and something that is going to target the area where you are mostly going to be working that day. Thank you for joining us, Lene. Let's hope that you can have some nice interactions here, because we've just got into the basics of a workout. So you start off with the warm-up. 5 minutes if you're intermediate to advanced. 10 minutes I would recommend for most people. Again, so dynamic stretching. Dynamic stretching means that you are not holding a stretch statically. You're not standing in one position and holding a stretch. That is generally best to do at the end of the session when we talk about the cool down and stretching. In the warm-up, dynamic stretching is actually moving the muscle through its range of motion and not holding it in one position. And that's what we call dynamic stretching. Very, very important, because that also helps with different joints, warming up of different joints, instead of spending time doing multiple different kinds of rotations. Dynamic stretching can tick those two boxes. Then you need something that helps to raise your heart rate, okay? Remember homeostasis? There are different portions of homeostasis of how it works with us and against us. We need it to work with us at all times. In order to do that, we need to tell our body, prime our body, let the body know that like a spike of movement is coming, because our brain knows, yes, I am working out, I am at the gym, I am at the squat track, whatever. Your brain knows that. Your body doesn't know sherbet. Your body doesn't know anything until you actually start moving it. So prime your body towards what you are actually going to be doing first. For example, if you do a split routine and you're doing squats, make sure that you mimic some sort of movement where your knee is going through flexion and extension, okay? Make sure that you're doing something where you're moving your hips, your glutes. We're doing a compound movement. And from previous videos, you should know compound movements, we're using multiple muscle groups over multiple joints. And in order for you to make sure that all of those joints, those muscles work together and know that movements is coming, you need to do some sort of movement that's going to mimic or use the muscles that you're about to put under stress and tension. Okay, so that can actually be doing the movement at a very lightweight by getting up to building up to a certain amount depending on what you are going up to. But even before that, something that I didn't mention is do some sort of light cardiovascular training. This is going to get the main muscle in your chest pumping faster. It's going to be pushing blood and all of the good nutrients and all of the good stuff through your body so that the nutrients can get to where they're going, so that the fluids can get into the joints, so that again you don't end up hurting yourself and your body is going to get into, you're gonna feel a lot better doing the movement, guys. The worst thing in the world, the worst feeling in the world is when you are not actually warmed up and you put a heavy weight on your back, for example, and you do a squat. Like, it just doesn't feel good and it just doesn't feel nice, and let's stay away from that because that's your body telling you. And no. So 3 things that we're going to be doing in the warm-up: some sort of rotations or dynamic stretching, some sort of cardiovascular exercise, that would mimic whichever parts of the body that you are doing. Yes, exactly, Lene. That is a recipe for injury. So if you're doing more of an upper body workout, if you do a split routine, you can even do a arm cycle. You can do walkouts, like hand walkouts. You can do, if you're Lene, some handstands. Do some sort of exercise that is going to get your heart rate going up, and best case scenario, targeting the area that you're going to be most working. Again, if you're doing a split routine and it's mostly like back or legs, you can do running, you can do skipping, you can do cycling, whatever. So today, for my warm-up, for my leg day, I went on a 3K run around the Commons. It's a little block in a circle. I ran 3Ks as my cardiovascular, get my heart rate up. And then just before you do, if you're doing a resistance training program, start on a very lightweight that mimics the movement if you want the easiest version, and then build yourself up to your working weight and then start there. That's your first set. Cool. Now we get into the good stuff, the middle part of the workout, where lots of people really normally just want to jump straight into. Okay, once you are actually in that certain zone, you've got your heart rate primed, you've got your muscle primed. The biggest mistake that I see people doing is they do not stick to their rest periods. If you want to follow an exercise plan, and if you want to make sure you're getting the most out of it, you best be sticking to your rest periods. If you take rests for too long, your heart rate's going to go down. All of the good stuff that I told you about earlier is not going to be pumped to all areas of the body, and you're also losing out on staying in the right zone, which is where the magic happens. That's where the benefits really come from. So if you are doing a plan that is endurance based, so muscular endurance based, you want to be resting between sets for less than 30 seconds. 30 seconds max or less. No rest. Okay, jokes, okay, cool, jokes. No rest would be if you're doing some sort of high intensity interval training maybe, or some sort of functional fitness workout that requires you to, like, has a certain goal in mind. Otherwise, you want to be making sure that, so if you're doing the strength endurance, 30 seconds or less. If you're going to be building muscle, you're going to be resting between 30 seconds and 1 minute 30 seconds. No more than that really. Otherwise, I've gone into that before. I'm not going to go off track. Stay on track, Neil. If you're going to be doing strength training or power training, you can be resting between 2 and 5 minutes per set. Guys, especially guys here, don't fool yourself. If you are doing anything above 6 repetitions, you're not doing proper strength training. You're doing a form of strength training, but you're doing a form of strength training that doesn't require your body to actually rest 2 to 5 minutes, because you're not burning purely ATP, which is the only reason why you should, if you're doing strength and power, rest for that long, because the body takes that long to replenish that sort of energy source. I hope this is not confusing, and I hope that I haven't killed you guys. Another thing I'd like to mention is you don't need to do 10 different exercises per muscle group. If you are doing a split routine, you don't need to do 10 different kinds of leg movements. Keep it simple, stupid. Rather do 30 minutes of focusing on the best kinds of exercises than trying to be fancy and doing so many different kinds of movements and just trying to, like, I don't know, just kind of overstimulate yourself. You'll always be constantly going back and checking your program. You're not gonna, it just becomes complicated. Don't complicate things, keep things simple. Don't do too many exercises per muscle group, okay? Rather stick to the good stuff. And that brings me to another very important point. When picking which exercise to go first, it's not a thing of going eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or, oh, that's my favorite exercise, let me do that. how you should do it is you should take the most strenuous exercise. So if we're talking about terms, if you have a compound exercise, those compound exercises should go in the beginning of your program. Don't do them towards the end. While your body has enough energy, while your body has ample amounts of ATP and glucose stored in your muscles and in the liver, blah, 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 fish paste, you want to be making sure that you're using the ability and the energy that your body has for the hardest movements first before there's some sort of pre-fatigue that can creep in. If you are fatiguing your body by maybe warming up for too long or for doing stupid isolated exercises first and then moving into your compound exercises, your body may be pre-fatigued. When you are pre-fatigued, generally the muscle doesn't fire the exact way in which that you envision it to do. So if you have very good proprioception, if you have very good balance, if you are very coordinated, you have more chance than someone that is uncoordinated, non-proprioception, etc., to get the movement right, but you are still putting yourself at a risk, because when you are tired, there's much more chance that if you're squatting, your knees start to come in, your back starts to run, for just an example. And when you are moving your body through a bad form, if you're a strong person or you've been exercising a long time, you generally get away with it for a lot longer than a beginner. But whether you're a beginner or intermediate or advanced and you're moving in a way that isn't the correct movement pattern for your skeletal system, etc., you only get away with it until you stop getting away with it. Once you stop getting away with it, that basically means you probably injured yourself or you've dropped the weight on the floor or whatever. So hardest exercises first. In order to check which are the hardest exercises, it's generally your foundation movements, which most programming is built around, your squat, your deadlift, and your bench press. So it's normally around those. So if those movements come up in any one of your exercise plans, start with that. If you don't have squat, dead, or bench lift. If you don't have squat, deadlift, or bench press in your exercise plan that day, find out which other exercise moves the most amount of joints. Generally, if a movement is taking place over multiple joints, that is going to be the most strenuous for your body. Cool. I'm going to be going into more detail about that in a future video. For now, we've spoken about the warm-up, we've spoken about the main set or the main stuff that you do in that exercise plan. Now let's talk about cooling down and stretching. Another thing people really love to skip. I've gone through periods of time where I have been a very big culprit of this. I will own that right now. Sometimes, especially when actually I was doing athletic training, when I was doing Olympic weightlifting, or when I was actually doing athletics training, my sessions were spanning over 2 hours, sometimes a little bit longer. By the time I got to the end of my session, I was just like, do I really need to cool down? Do I really need to stretch? Don't be like me. Stretching is super important, but cooling down is also important. So you're letting your body know, okay, the time that we've done all the hectic stuff, that is starting to calm down. Get your heart rate down, get your blood from like going crazy and getting pumped all over the place. Let just your whole body start to relax. It's going to help you with tension after your session. So if you are someone that battles with tension and maybe headaches or it's aches and pains, a cool down may be something that you are missing from your exercise routine. So do a cool down, at least 5 minutes. And then after that, once your heart rate has come down, and then you can go into a full bend without you feeling like your head is going to explode. So for example, if you haven't done a cool down and you're going into a forward bend and you are stretching, it's not going to be very fun, like, because your pulse is still really high. It just feels like there's literally like a beating drum in your head. So to avoid that kind of extra unnecessary hypertensive condition, cool down first, then stretch. after 5 minutes of stretching. 5 minutes is not a long time to stretch, guys. If you only are going to stretch for 5 minutes, make sure that you're stretching the muscles that you worked. You don't always have to do a complete full body stretch. If you want to, cool. If you don't, at least make sure that you're stretching the muscles that you have worked out that day. And I think that was a lot of me talking really fast to try and get everything in and what I wanted to speak about. If I missed everything, if I missed anything here, or if you have a question, you now have a time to stop me, because I'm going to answer 2 questions, and the questions are starting to come in slower and slower. So guys, please ask questions. When we post on the feed 24 hours before, ask a question, I'll answer it. Let me try and find which, there are the questions. Okay, so we had a question asking about calorie deficits and what role macros play. So in order for you to be losing weight, it's pretty simple and standard. You need to be burning more calories than you are ingesting. If you are ingesting more calories than you are burning, you are going to pick up weight. If you are burning more calories than you are ingesting, you're going to lose weight. If you eat relatively as many calories as you are burning, you will maintain weight. Very simple stuff, okay? Now, what role do macros play? There are 3 macronutrients. I don't know if I've gone through this, but I hope some of you know which them, or some of you, I hope all of you know what the 3 macronutrients are. Macro, the big groups that they put food into. You have protein, you have carbohydrates, you have fats, okay? What role do they play? Well, protein and carbohydrates have about the same amount of calories per gram of each other, okay? Fats is quite a bit more. It's not double, but it's almost double. So for example, 1 gram of protein, or it will take about 2 grams of protein or 2 grams of carbohydrates to have as many calories as around 1 gram of fat would have, okay? So what role do macronutrients play? Depending on what system that you follow, there's lots of different systems out there. There's a lot of different people saying different things, and different studies saying different things are better for certain people and your blood type, and carbohydrates are bad, and people, and science says a lot of things. But basically, whatever ratio of protein, carbs and fats you're eating, you need to make sure that if you add up the amount of calories that you're eating at the end of the day, you need to make sure that that number adds up to less than what you are expending, okay? A quick tip on something I should probably do a whole series about, but a quick tip is, if you want to be in the golden zone, if when you're losing weight, you want to make sure that your body is losing the best kind of weight, so just burning fat and not burning muscle, your body burns a certain amount of calories every single day by doing nothing. It's called your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. Say, for example, that amount is 2,000 calories. If you are eating 2,100 calories, so you're eating more than your BMR, you should be eating more than your BMR if you are exercising. Let's say you're eating 2,100 calories. You're already burning, without doing anything, 2,000 calories. And then you do a workout that burns 300 calories. So for that day, you have burned 2,300 calories. You've only ingested 2,100 calories. In this example, your body is not in fight or flight mode because you've eaten more than what you require to just breathe and live, but you've put your body in the deficit by doing exercise. This is where your body is very happy to lose fat and maintain muscle. So if you can make sure that you're creating the calorie deficit by eating above your BMR but below your output, and you create that output with exercise, that's how you're going to get the fastest results possible and the best results, so that when you jump in on the scale and you're looking at your weight, or actually when you're jumping on a certain, let's say a proper scale that measures your body composition, you're going to be gaining muscle, losing fat, and then your metabolism is going to be fast, you're going to look good, naked, it's going to be amazing. So try do that. Okay. The last question that I have for today is measurements. Which ones are important? Okay. So the important measurements that I would say is the ratio between, so if you can find out how much muscle you have, how much body fat you have, and then using a basic formula, you can find that number that I've just spoken about, your BMR. So if you can find your body composition, that is the best kind of measurement to have. Scale weight is just measuring how much mass you have. That could be bad mass, it could be good mass, you don't know. If you don't have a BMR or a scale that can measure body composition, or you can't find someone to, or somewhere to use a scale like that, the caliper testing is also quite good for body fat. From body fat, you can find out how much muscle you have. If you don't have either of those two, I would say the best way to keep your measurements, and it's the way that we measure things in the academy, is just take progress photos and also have maybe a pair of pants that are tight, and then have the goal of it not being tight in the future, which means you're losing weight around that midsection. Okay, I've already spoken too much. What's new? Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, please speak to us on our news feed 24 hours before we ask you guys for questions. Thank you for joining. The amount of people on the video was better than it's been for the last 2 weeks or so. So thank you for sticking with me here. I hope it wasn't too boring. If you found value from this video, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, tell everyone about the academy. We run a 6-week challenge, which is the first step in you reaching your goals and learning about exercise plans and being physically better and having physical better health. It's only 699 Rand. It's a real steal, and we have just launched a new product that is happening at the end of this month. It is an in-person workshop. It is pretty much only for people that are in Cape Town. So anyone that is in Cape Town, on the 26th and the 27th of this month, we are going to be going through a series where I cut out all of the fluff and all of the stuff, extra stuff that I say in these videos, and I'm going to be working almost on a one-to-one basis. So I'm looking for 6 people, only 6 people, to come join me in Cape Town on the 26th and the 27th, where we're going to learn how you guys can pick exercise plans, know which one will work for you and which ones won't work with you. That includes a personal training session, goal session, and you get 6 weeks on the application as well. That's only 950 bucks. Super cheap. A personal training session plus the 6 weeks is already more than what the value is already more than what you're actually paying. Please join me on that. Please share this video if you got good value out of it. I'll see you next week for Tip Tuesday. Thank you for joining me.